Well, it's a pleasure to welcome back to the program Gerald Celente from the Trends Research Institute. Good afternoon, Gerald.
Good afternoon, Chris.
You know, let's begin with your latest Trends Journal report. Your journal predicted the panic of '08, the collapse of '09. Both came to pass. Well, since then, the government propped up the market with a $2 trillion emergency bailout plan, and you're now calling for crash of 2010.
We said from the very beginning with the TARP bailouts that the bailout bubble would burst, that this would only last for so long. The so long is now over. It's over in China. It's over in India. The so long is over in all of Europe. The banks, of course, the central banks pledged they would never buy up bad paper from the banks, and they're buying it up. And so there's just one after another. We just heard again from the Federal Reserve that they were going to, I love the language they use, Fed to reinvest principal on mortgage proceeds to counter a slowing economy. That's white shoe boys jive to steal your money to give to the Wall Street gang. And so, no, there's the crash of 2010 is underway. We're watching the markets continue to go down, and as you well know, we believe gold is going to go way up.
Well, you know, I'd like to discuss another theme you see on the horizon, and that's technology for the lower income sector of society. You know, with unemployment near 10%, you expect millions of unemployed to purchase low-cost technology, and this could present big opportunities for sharp entrepreneurs out there.
And that's the thing to always remember, that there are plenty of opportunities out there. And yes, this technology for the poor is a huge trend. For example, over in India, where you have half the population living on less than $2 a day. And so what they're doing is they're making stoves, and they're making heating units and water filtration systems using the highest of high technology and refrigeration that costs very, very little money and built to scale for what they need. And this is really what the future is. But the United States doesn't seem to understand that. For example, let's look again. We just went through a crisis not more than a few years ago of gasoline prices going through the roof. Now that they've moderated, guess what the big sellers are again? Big SUVs and pickup trucks. Whether it's too big to fail or buying houses that are too big or cars that are too big, you're going in the wrong direction. The direction to go into is less is more. It's the oldest axiom in architecture and art, and it could not be truer in today's environment. Because we're going to see, this is going to be the age of the entrepreneur, because the corporations are going to continue to slash, continue to pay low wages, and those that are going to succeed are going to go out on their own. Now, I just finished a trip around the parts of the Northeast and going to old cities on purpose that were really big during the heyday of the Industrial Revolution and the building of America that are now in disrepair. There's so much opportunity there. For these young people that are living home with mommy and daddy after graduating college, and they're hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, and the parents are paying for their cell phone bills and room and board, and let them become the entrepreneurs of tomorrow, and you could refurbish and rejuvenate these cities with architecture and building that's far superior than the garbage that they've been building now. And so there's a lot of opportunities, and yes, it's not only low cost, it's quality at low price points. Those are also the considerations, because when they're making this low-tech product, or this high technology for the poor, it's the highest of high-tech. They're using the innovations for building power plants that they're now using to build a small stove or a refrigerator.
I recall several years ago hearing how China had actually leaped forward ahead of many other of the developing nations simply because they hadn't invested in the massive telephone and cable infrastructure that we were forced to invest in. They simply went to higher tech cell phone technology to offer practically the entire populace telephone access for just merely pennies on the dollar. In sort of a similar vein, these advances in high technology will allow entrepreneurs significant profits, and that's going to help save the domestic economy.
That's it, and that's what we have to do. We have to save the domestic economy, and the only way you do that is by buying among each other. We cannot continue to support other countries as we go down. They turned us into a service sector society, and they sold a big lie of great jobs in service, no more dirty jobs in manufacturing. Chris, think of the word service sector. Servitude, servant, serf. We went from a country of craftspeople, tradesmen, merchants, to a country now where we're cashiers and shelf stockers and clerks.
If we look at the other side of the ledger, Walmart caught a lot of flack lately from folks who claim that the local economies are suffering terribly. The mom and pop businesses, hardware stores and retailers and jewelers and things like that. If the consumer can get that product for pennies on the dollar, how are we going to put that genie back in the bottle?
Go back to why the Walmarts didn't exist before. I remember as a young man and going to college, my first year in 1965, learning about such things as the Robertson-Patman Act, the Sherman Antitrust Act. It was so that the big guys couldn't rob the rest of us blind, and that you couldn't buy on huge quantity and get a huge discount. They give you a discount for shipping, but you weren't better than anybody else. So what it did is it tilted the playing field to the people that are the big financiers that could put everybody else out of business. The only way this country comes back, as I said, is when we become a nation of merchants and manufacturers, of craftspeople and tradesmen, not of serfs, servants, and servitude. Hey, you want a great job as a home health aide? I got one waiting for you.
You're also concerned about a gluttonous society, Gerald. You say we drive big SUVs, we've got big McMansions, big credit card and mortgage debts, big federal and local state deficits. Something has to give.
As you mentioned, it's not only that, it's the people themselves. The country's become obese. It's become too fat for its own good. And I know that's politically incorrect, but it's not. You can't keep eating garbage and being unhealthy and expect to function at a high level. So people ask me, what should we do? Well, the first thing is you have to get in shape, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. You can't do it without it. It's not going to happen. And so we have to, and that goes back to the other trends. How about buying local? Up here in Kingston, New York, we have a farmer's market every Saturday. We're in the Hudson Valley. The place is packed, music playing, great food, the highest of quality, and people having a wonderful time. And then you compare that by going into a Walmart, which is nothing more than a huge self-storage unit with counters in it.
And a sterile environment.
Yeah. So this is what brings the country back. Go back to the Great Depression. Look at the pictures of the people. I have a photo of my parents' wedding, may their souls rest in peace, 1934. Italian immigrants got married at the height of the Depression. You should see how these people look, how dignified, what shape they're in, how respectful of themselves they are, how dignified. And that's what this country has to go back to, rather than the gross gangster look of stupidity that's become the pop culture in this country. Why, would you ever imagine Dwight D. Eisenhower on The View?
We're talking about gluttonous behavior, and I think millions have been sort of lulled into complacency due to this corn syrup that's injected into practically every product that we purchase today. Do you think that the manufacturers require some blame?
Yeah, I was awarded an honorary doctorate from National University of Health Sciences for the work I've done over the years in complementary medicine. I wouldn't take this stuff. You have high cholesterol? Yes, change your diet. Now try that one. That'll be radical. And you mentioned about the fructose. Now the story just came out on Reuters about cancer cells slurp up fructose. Oh yeah, what a surprise. There's a way out of this, Chris. But again, people have to get healthy spiritually, emotionally, and physically. Only the strong are going to survive the greatest coming depression.
Very good. Let's talk about your neo-survivalism. You know, Americans are survivors. We're facing a worst-case scenario, I think, on many fronts here. The economy, unemployment, inflation, foreclosures, massive debt. Why don't you tell listeners a few simple methods, techniques that you've honed over the years to become a Celente neo-survivalist?
Well, number one, I watch what I eat. It's hard for everybody. It's not easy not to eat junk. But, you know, I'm Italian, so I eat high-quality food, number one. I buy local, and I buy as much organic as I can. Number two, every day I try to meditate and quiet my mind. I want to be in balance physically, emotionally, as I said, and spiritually. Number three, you know, I learned how to protect myself. I'm a close combat practitioner and have been for over a quarter of a century. And people should understand that as well. I'm a believer in the Second Amendment rights. And as people, you've heard me say this over and over again, and I'll keep repeating it over again. When people lose everything and they have nothing left to lose, they lose it. And people are going to start losing it. You're going to see more and more violent crime. So people should start thinking in those terms. But number four, it's the perfect grasshopper and ant scenario right now. We're in the midst of the summer. The winter's coming. Are you prepared? Start putting up preserves for the winter. Start really feeding your family fine foods. Rip up those useless lawns that are growing grass that you can't eat. It's just useless stuff. So start producing out of that. Really become self-sufficient. Don't spend a dime you don't have to. And also, when you do spend a dime, spend it on quality. And also, very important, get together with people of like mind, whether it's in a church, a book group, whatever it might be, because if the worst happens, you want to have a support group. And I have a number of support groups. And also, if you live in an area that's prone to, say, terrorism, because we believe there's going to be another 9/11 magnitude strike, considering the United States foreign policy escapades. Are you prepared to get away from there? Do you have a support group and know the way out? What if you're in New York City and there's another 9/11? You think you're going to be able to get out of there? Do you have an escape plan? What if they hit a nuclear power plant? Look what's going on in Russia now with the fear of the wildfires, the hottest on record August that's burning up the country. What happens if a nuclear power plant goes up? Are you going to be able to escape? Those are things to consider. If you prepare for the worst and the worst doesn't happen, you have nothing to lose. What if they do have a terror strike and they close the banks? Are you going to have money? Or will they devalue the money again as they did the last time they called a bank holiday? Remember, they closed Wall Street after 9/11. We believe this time they're going to close the banks after a terror strike and they'll devalue your currency. So do you have enough on hand, whether it's a precious metal or cash, to turn into one? Because we believe that the next time they close the banks, they'll do exactly like they did the first time they closed the banks, and that's devalue the dollar.
You also discuss a major terror strike. We haven't had a significant terror attack since 2001. Is the system really working that well?
If anybody thinks the system is working that well, look at who the past and present head of Homeland Security, what is it, Janet Napolitano? She's going to save you? Look at all the breakdowns in the system. This is what people really need to realize, Chris, that the government is ineffective at every level. They're losers. They're losing the war in Afghanistan. I don't want to hear how they're going to they're making progress. It's 9 years going, and between that and the Iraq losing war, we're spending trillions of dollars. They have BP and Katrina quality rescue skills. Look at the education system. We don't even win, place, or show. No one is in control. You have a bunch of bureaucrats that have never worked a day in their lives, that are political wannabes, that never get their fingers dirty. These people are not going to save you. When the Greatest Depression hits, only the strong are going to survive, and the weakest and the most helpless are going to be the ones you better watch out for, because they're going to want to have what you have and not work or pay for it.
You know, Gerald, with 20 million vacant homes and millions more facing foreclosure in the next 2 years or so, it seems like buying a house is tantamount to catching a falling knife. I'd like your thoughts on buying versus renting a home.
Well, it depends on what your position in life is. You know, if you can afford it, of course, you know, you want to buy it, and it's a great place where you think it's going to be a good investment value because of its, you know, historic nature or great location. You know, of course, you know, life is short, and if you could afford it, great. But if you're just starting out, you don't need a house. Why buy now? It's not going to get better. It's only getting worse, and that's after they've dumped how